right, well, good morning, everyone. For those of you that are new here, my name is Shelby Pritchard, and I am the moderator for the Crop Hour webinar series. I appreciate all of you taking your time out of your morning to be here with us today. Just a few quick reminders. We will have a short poll after each speaker today. We ask that you please fill it out. It remains anonymous and it helps us for the next time. Also, after each talk, I'll pull up the CCA credits for anyone needing those. And just a reminder, feel free to ask questions throughout each presentation. We're more than happy to answer your questions. Our first speaker today is Paul Johnson. He is the SDSU Extension Weed Program Coordinator. Paul obtained his BS and MS in Agronomy and a BS in General Agriculture from South Dakota State University. He was an agronomist at SDSU for 25 plus years, as well as the Agronomy Center Manager for 5. And in addition, he has been a farmer for 40 years. And today, Paul's talk is going to be weed control in winter and spring wheat. It's not just 2,4-D anymore. So without further ado, Paul, take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody. And we're going to try and get this up here and going. And I think we're right up there. Shelby, does it look good to you?
Yep, good to go.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about weed control in winter and spring wheat today. And, you know, in the past, a lot of times it just was talked about that as long as you had some 2,4-D in your wheat, you were ready to go, and that was all you needed. And obviously, we're way beyond that now. It isn't that you can't still use 2,4-D. It's a tool, and we'll talk about in some treatments where adding some 2,4-D may help the situation out. So with that, this is kind of threefold. You can say wheat is reliable, steady, and consistent. I can tell you the tractor in the picture is also reliable, steady, and consistent, and is what my dad, who's in the picture, started farming with back in '43, and it's been part of the farm ever since, and I still use it to mow road ditches. So let's get right into the data. We're going to start out with winter wheat here first. Prickly lettuce is one of those things that comes along, and some of our products are good on it and some aren't. So we're going to look at a few of them here. On the top, the VCRR is visual crop response, or what commonly is referred to as injury of the crop. The prickly lettuce 2 weeks after application, and the prickly lettuce control pre-harvest. So we can see Gold Sky did a good job here to start with, and also all the way through the season. We can say Open Sky maybe was just a hair better. And Open Sky plus some 2,4-D ester. The 2,4-D ester took a little bit of injury out of the situation here and provided very excellent control. The Open Sky and QLEX also did that. Open Sky Infinity Broad Spec, definitely doing good there too. Come down with Perfect Match, real good on the injury and good on the weed control. We had 2,4-D here, and with Perfect Match, it actually increased the injury, but would be our quickest control and control throughout the year. Perfect Match with QLEX, first one that showed no injury signs at all. And Perfect Match in the broad spec also look good. A couple other ones in there, Aerial XL plus Husky and Husky Complete. So showing there a lot of things in this test did an excellent job on on prickly lettuce. Let's go on to look at some Downy Brome control. In this test, we've got Downy Brome and wild buckwheat that we're looking at. Limpos, Varro, carnivore, 49% on the Downy Brome. We take and add Olympus. This would be in the fall, followed by a spring treatment where we put some more Olympus on, and now we get that Downy Brome up into that very acceptable range. And it's going to kind of be a theme as we go down through here. If we don't have the Olympus both in the spring and fall, we just don't get that real good Downy Brome control. Varro and carnivore in the spring. Now here, the Olympus in the spring really brought it up, but in most cases we need that double shot to get it real good. We can see here the Husky Complete, the Olympus was down a good 10% there, and we kind of like to say for weed control we want a minimum of 75%. Or we're going backwards, and so kind of running that line there. So on to another winter wheat test, looking at prickly lettuce and kochia. This time, kochia being first, followed by prickly lettuce. Gold Sky and was good on both. Open Sky the same. Perfect match on the prickly lettuce here, dropped some, but the kochia was still good. Teammate, definitely weaker on the prickly lettuce. Husky Complete, Axial and Husky and Stinger, a little weak on the prickly lettuce, and Everett's and Wide Match did a real good job on both. So basically in here, we got 3 treatments that did a real good job on both of the prickly lettuce and the kochia. Now let's go to a new product. In fact, it's not on the market yet. It's probably going to be a couple years. And this new product is going to be called Maestro EXT or Extra. Maestro, we know, is our old bromoxynil product, and here the rate is the amount of product in ounces that we're using. We're looking at kochia, Lambsquarter, common ragweed, wild buckwheat, and yield. And I can tell you the last 4 are all in the same plot. The kochia was in another plot with the same treatments that was further out west, and we don't have yield off from that one. But just combining them all together here so you can see the treatments. The Maestro Extra at 16 ounces would be considered the low rate. Did an excellent job. If we added some non-ionic surfactant in with that same treatment, we can see yield came up. Weed control was about the same, but yields were also somewhat variable. If we just go up in the rate on the Maestro Extra, we can see good weed control across the board, 99s across there. And then we look at a high rate here, and I don't have the injury rating box on here, but that's what this rate would be looking for, and we did not see any injury with this product, even at what would be probably will end up being a 2x rate. Just another some experimental compounds we're looking at, and basically this 16 and the 16 comes out to be the same as our Maestro Extra on here. 16 ounce of Maestro and 16 ounces of the new product. It's called 063, but it's really an old product called dicloprop and or MCPP, and it's been used for the last 60 years, 70, getting close to 80 years in lawn weed control. And just found that this one really had good kochia control. It would be a relative of 2,4-D, and we know that 2,4-D is not good on kochia. And so even this product alone, without the bromoxynil in there, did a very good job on the weeds. We can see it backed off a little bit on wild buckwheat, but otherwise looked real good even alone. Here we would just have the bromoxynil alone, and we can see it did a good job there too. So putting those two together gives us a very broad spectrum weed control with both contact and translocated herbicides in there. Here we've got another experimental in. We had a rate of 20 ounces of Maestro Extra, added 6 more ounces of 105 and 99 across the board. Another experimental 106 and 99s across the board. And another experimental in there, 04, again, 99s across the board. And we can see here our check was 67 bushels, did a real good job that way. And as I said, yield was variable. We had a 12 bushel LSD, and this would have yield came out of our Northeast farm this year, and we were real dry early and got moisture late, and so consequently, depending on how the plot was and the soil types, there was quite a bit of variation in those yields. We can see on weed control about 5% difference in order to tell them closely. Okay, going back another year, we've been working with this product a couple years here. Here we're gonna just do the dicloprop and the Maestro together. This was on early and late kochia control in spring wheat. We can see the various rates no matter how we mixed it. For kochia, it's just deadly. It gets it all and does a good job. And then going back another year, we started out with a real low rate down at 8 ounces. We can see there we didn't have perfect kochia control, but the minute we got up to the 12, 16, here we're talking 1 week and 4 weeks after application. We can see it isn't real fast acting like Maestro. That's a contact, but it does very good on long-term weed control. Kind of like 2,4-D, it's got it twisted down and it slowly goes and then eventually it is dead. Here we've got Ronox or MCPA. We can see, you know, that just is no good on kochia. Comet here also did fairly good on that kochia control. So that's kind of a summary of this new product. And as we move forward here, want to just show some other products that we have been looking at over the last couple, 3 years. This one we're looking at common Lambsquarter, common ragweed, and wild buckwheat. And this would be with that product too. Sorry, I had one more slide. I was thinking we were switching out of it, but this would be at the Northeast farm. And again, we can see the product alone. We got to get up to that 16 ounce rate but you can see why we're adding the Maestro on here at 16 ounces, where 87 on common ragweed and 80 on wild buckwheat. But if we put the Maestro in there, it takes it up and does a very good job. Here we can see the MCPA again, good on common Lambsquarter, not bad on common ragweed, but wild buckwheat it drops off on, and Comet the same way. And so that's how the mixtures come out and what they're looking at for a final product. The problem why it's taking so long is, one, EPA is running very slow at this time, but also the diclofrop has never had a food label, and so it has to go through some extra testing to make sure there's no residue in the crop. Okay, on this one last one there with the diclofrop and the Maestro together, we can see this would be the same test as we were just on, but when we start putting them together, we got that real high weed control all the way across, and get those upper 90s. So with that, let's go on to looking at some wild oats and Lambsquarter control and spring wheat. Here we've got wild oats, here common Lambsquarter and yield. Another newer product, Battalion 2. This one have been just from this year. We can see alone plus audit really didn't make any difference. Going to parity here, and again kind of took some of the wild oats control out or antagonized it. Battalion with Stinger the same way. Star Rain Ultra also had that, and Battalion 2 with 2,4-D ester also had that reduction in wild oats yield. Anytime with grass products, when we put other products in, we a lot of times get an antagonistic effect, or we lose some of our grass control when we're trying to help out on the broadleaves with other things. Here we can see with the MCPA ester, it's up to 86, Avito up to 88, Husky 84, perfect match. Now just as a comparison, and that same way with Husky Complete, we can see the wild oats in that mid 80s, and wide match plus Everest, and there we got our checks. So it kind of shows you the Battalion for common Lambsquarter was good enough alone. It got us a 98 and give us the best wild oats control, as long as we didn't add other products to it. So, oh, and the LSD, the yields were non-significant, and we can see wild oats 3 and 1 on Lambsquarter. Excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat this morning, and I don't want to start coughing on here. Let's go on now. One of the things that gets asked quite often is, in the eastern part of the state, is how do we control water hemp in spring wheat? And actually, water hemp normally isn't that much of a problem in spring wheat, because when the spring wheat gets going early and gets planted early, unless you've got a poor stand, it shades out the water hemp before it really gets going. And so if there are plants, they never amount to anything, but a lot of times they don't even get started. So let's look at a few things here. We're looking at common water hemp and common Lambsquarter, early and late. Culex, we can see on common water hemp is kind of weak, down in the 60s there. Wide match, 50 and 30. Wide match plus QLEX. Now we're up in the mid 80s. But you put a little 2,4-D in with the wide match. I believe it's about 6 ounces in here. Our data books show these results. And now we're up at 97 and 99 on that common water hemp. 2,4-D ester, low rates, very deadly on water hemp. Look at a few other things with the wide match, Harmony and Express, 82.76. Husky alone, get up to those mid to upper 90s. And a few more here. Pixaro, just a little weak. We can add NIS, helps it a little bit. Destiny, it's about the same. But you put the 2,4-D in there again, and we're up at 98 control. So it really shows that as we come down through here, open sky, we can put all the additives in, still not good enough. QLEX, it's still not good enough. But if we looked at that one, really the key is to put a little 2,4-D ester in there to help out. Now some just looking at some regular treatments for common ragweed, wild buckwheat, early and late husky, did a real good job. Wide match plus MCP. Early was kind of weak on the buckwheat. It didn't take it out real fast, but when we get close to harvest, it's all taken out. Here's Talinar, Bronate, Luxar, and Husky. Again, just kind of a broad spectrum here, just so you can see comparisons and how they did. Varo plus Husky plus Star Rain Ultra, you know, all 98, 99s. Axio Bold and Husky, and all of those did a real good job and very good yields in that. So a lot of good treatments out there, but it's getting the treatment for the right weeds is what's important, and that's what you need to know ahead of time in order to make sure you're in those upper 90s. Here again, looking at some broadleaves, common ragweed, wild buckwheat, again at the Northeast Farm. Pixaro with NIS. We come down through here. We add some 2,4-D. Didn't really help out here because 2,4-D isn't good on wild buckwheat, but we can see the common ragweed, both of them. Adding the 2,4-D in this case really didn't help anything. Harmony Extra, same way, might have got it in a little bit earlier, got that up, but 99s at the end. Wide R match, the new one, you know, that's replacing wide match. Here we can see we're in the upper 90s all the way across. Wide R match plus 2,4-D. Basically, again, the 2,4-D didn't help any, or the Harmony and Express here. Wide match and QLEX, basically the same, kind of telling us the wide match or the wide R match was all we needed for control there. Now the open sky with the additives looks good. Husky with AMS also looks real good. Very good yields and fairly consistent across the board. A little bit lower here on open sky treatment. Okay, Lambsquarter and Pigweed control. Again, this one would be at the Northeast. wide match plus QLEX, and we can see very good on both. 65 bushel yield, affinity broad spec with wide match and affinity TM here, wide match alone. We can see the red root pigweed, the wide match was a little bit lower. The wide R match is supposed to be helping out more on that pigweed. Star Rain Flex, we can see a little weak on the old common Lambsquarter, and not enough though density there to affect yield. Husky really doing a good job here, 99s on both. Hat Trick the same way, and we can see we had 5 bushel variation there, and so basically all of them are about the same. Pigweed control with different adjuvants, carnivore alone, and here's some of the different adjuvants out there to see if it's helping any. Basically on the pigweed, it didn't make a difference here. Interlock would be a drift retardant product mainly, and we can see there by getting those droplets a little bit larger, sometimes we can drop weed control just a hair, but it's allowing us to go in windier conditions. Here we got the same way going with weld here, and we can see here it pretty much stayed the same. So perfect match with some adjuvants. We kind of go down through here to finish this out. We can see all those adjuvants pretty much didn't hurt, but didn't necessarily help up here. We can see how even in here, the end pack starts to help a little bit. And we do get some a little bit better weed control down there with the wild buckwheat. Another one on spring wheat, looking at green foxtail, common Lambsquarter, and wild buckwheat. We come down through here and we just kind of pull all these to look at. You can kind of see it. We've got, 60, 70 control on the green foxtail, nothing super, but it is knocking some of it out if it's bad. If we look at yellow foxtail, we've got one here, Gold Sky, and we've looked at these treatments before in wild oats, and here we can see they all did a pretty good job on the yellow foxtail, with the exception of Everest with wide match here is down, and Husky Complete is dropped a little bit. Foxtail with ragweed here, Varro being our foxtail control, and we're looking at other treatments to help out for the common ragweed. And we can see here good on common ragweed throughout, but the Husky Complete on yellow foxtail very weak, and the others kind of in the 70s. Few more just to come down in that same test. We can see here that the Varro was down lower, and the Everest plus Super Macy dropped, and when we put MCPA, ester, amine, we lost some of our grass control there. And just one quick slide to finish out. Palmer Amaranth, I get questions all the time about where it's added in the state. Being we haven't kind of been on, not this past year, but the year before, we had one spot found in Yankton. Looked like we had a a combine or a contamination from manure right in the edge of the field. Brown County, we had in prevented plant acres, the guy put millet in, and the millet seed was contaminated with Palmer Amaranth. That now is a prohibited weed seed in seed, and so it has to be tested. If there's any amaranth in your in the weed seed part of the sample, it has to be tested to make sure it's not Palmer. If it is, it can't be sold in South Dakota anymore. And then this year, Pennington, real late, we found combine contamination from the year before in a sunflower field. So with that, here's my contact information, and we'll turn it back to Shelby.
All right, thank you so much, Paul. We have that poll up now for everyone to quickly answer. And then if you want to stop sharing your screen, I will go ahead and get that CCA up for everyone. So there's that. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A feature. And while these are up, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our second speaker of the day. It is Dr. Jonathan Kleinjan. He is the Extension Agronomist at SDSU here in Brookings. He serves as the director of the SDSU Crop Performance Testing Program and is the chair of the SDSU Variety Release Committee. And today, Dr. Kleinjan will be talking about 2022 South Dakota wheat update. So if no one else has any questions, I can go ahead and stop sharing the screen and let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Shelby. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Nice brisk winter day here, but it looks like we got some warm weather coming up this weekend again, so that's nice. I'm just going to give you guys an update on some wheat research I did this year, and part of my title initially was talking about how to increase grain protein content in wheat, so we'll talk a little bit about that today too. But my first slide, since my colleague Paul had a John Deere tractor on his presentation, I thought I'd share this one. I took this picture at home last spring, a couple of 450s. So we have a 450 from 1958 here in the foreground, and then a newer one from like 2013 in the background. So about 55, or if I'm doing my math right, years of progress here. And the interesting thing is I remember my dad planting oats with this when I was a kid, probably late 70s, and just makes me think, what are we going to see 50 years from now? I won't be alive 50 years from now, but I just wonder what the next 50 years or even 30 years of technology is going to bring. So let me see if I can figure out how to put on my laser pointer. It doesn't appear that I have that button this time. I don't know what's going on. Oh, here we go. All right, moving on. Just kind of a review of 2021. You guys lived through this as well as me, but the month of June is very important for the development of wheat. And we had a very warm June. If you look at this slide, pretty much all the state was much below normal in precip. Sorry, I started talking about temperature first, but we were very dry in June. I remember I was rooting for us to break the lowest precip record at the Brookings weather station. We didn't have it because we had a little bit of a shower the last day of June, but we were very close. I think we had about 7/10 of rain for the month of June, and it was that way in a lot of the state. And if we look at temperature, it was very warm, 8 to 10 degrees above normal for much of the state. So that was just very bad growing conditions for, I'd say, both winter and spring wheat, typically than what we'd like to see. So that being said, if you look at the areas where we have crop testing programs for winter wheat in the state, I have a box here at each location where there's a testing site, and the top number is the 5-year average from 2017 to 2020, or I'm sorry, 2016 to 2020. So before 2021, and then the bottom number is the site average yield in 2021. And if it was lower than the 5-year average, I put it in red. And if it was higher than average, I put it in green. So despite the fact that we had hot, dry conditions in many areas, we had some pretty good yields in some spots. Brookings County, I was very impressed. I thought the heat had hit at just the wrong time. Apparently we had enough soil moisture though, that the yields were very good in Brookings. Not quite so much at the Northeast farm. I think it might have been a little bit too wet in this part of the state actually, as the grain was finishing out, maybe not in June so much, but look at some of these yields in the central part of the state. This was at Dakota Lakes, and this number were 40 bushel above the 5-year average, but we had a little bit of irrigation going on. We irrigated that just to get it going in the fall before, and I think a little bit in the spring, but just that little bit of water was enough to give us some really strong yields. Out there in Hayes, we were right at average. Faith was pretty good. Sturgis was above average. They had a little bit more precip out there. And then the wall location was very good too. Just to mention, that was on fallow ground, so that helps a lot in a dry year. Winter, I was surprised. I was down there in June. Cracks in the soil a foot deep, and I thought things looked pretty dry, but we still had pretty good yields there too. So all in all, I would say that well, it looks like, you know, these areas suffered. I was going to say the north central part of the state suffered the most. Selby was pretty poor. They were very dry up there, but we also kind of had down here in Platte, we had some pretty poor yields there too. I know it was dry there as well, but I would say to generalize, if it's going to be a dry year, winter wheat is probably still your best crop or has the best yield potential. Okay, let's look at spring wheat. Same drill here. We don't have quite as extensive of a spring wheat testing location just because there's not much spring wheat growing south of this line. But anyway, spring wheat, I'd say, took it on the chin a little bit more than winter wheat in 2021. You can see the northeast part of the state yields weren't too bad. I think the yields should have been better here at Northeast Farm. I think we got put on a kind of a poor piece of ground there, and then it was. While it was wet in the northeast part of the state, it was just too dry at the time. The spring we needed water, and too warm by visiting with the cooperator. So central part of the state, spring wheat yields really took it on the chin, just too hot and dry. The timing was just a little bit different than the winter wheat. So Selby, which is usually our best location, was almost 30 bushel below the 5-year average. So tough year for spring wheat. Except for, you know, the extreme western part of the state and maybe the east. So anyway, that's just kind of a snapshot of how things did in the testing programs for this year. So I mentioned a little bit about this earlier. What am I going to talk about today? Yield trial results. I guess we touched on that a little bit by location, and then my recommendations for spring and winter wheat. A few slides on managing for higher grain protein content. And then some other wheat research or topics of interest that I've done over the last year. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the variety trial results. Just to mention these, we do virtual tours, or we've done these the last couple of years, and I hope to continue doing this sort of thing. If you want to look at each variety, I guess, in depth, we have spring wheat and winter wheat here, and these are on the extension yield result page, yield trial result pages, and Shelby posted that in the chat. But I take the time and walk through each of the varieties. It's myself and Carl Glover that go through the spring wheat, and myself and Sunish that go through the winter wheat. And we just talk for a few seconds or a minute on each variety, and then come some of the high points and what we know about them. And then in the center here, we had a bunch of in-person variety trial results. Some of these were pretty well attended and some were not. So I guess we have to decide next year how many of these we're going to do. But keep your eye out for those if you're interested in attending in person for the coming year. Okay, let's look at the winter wheat trial results, and I'll show you my recommendations there. So just to keep things brief, I grouped things by eastern, central, and western South Dakota. Today we're just going to look at central, since that's kind of the main wheat belt in the state. So when I publish these online, I sort everything by 3 years, and then by 2 years, and then by a single year, the latest year of testing. So I guess what I would point out here, any of these, what's shaded in blue is the top 1/3 of the trial over 3 years. Anything in the boldface is statistically similar to the plot winner. So really any of these, if we ran this trial again, could be considered to be statistically the same as the variety winner. Ideal has come on strong in the last couple of years because we have had no stripe rust. If you have a bad stripe rust year, Ideal is just going to get hammered. Draper did not have the best year in 2021, you can see here, but overall it's had a very good average in central South Dakota. And Overland, despite being an older variety, just keeps hanging on. I think that was a 2007 release from Nebraska, I want to say, but it just keeps hanging in there. So moving on, these three, winner, WB 4462 and Cy Wolverine, remember those. So let's go through and sort by the 2-year average. So you can see we're sorted by the 2-year rather than the 3-year. And we have a few new ones that come up that we've seen for 2 years and not 3 years. So these, I would say, might be promising. If you've seen them 2 years in a row now and they're still in the top third. CP 7017AX, that's a coaxing variety from Cropland or Winfield. And then we have another one from Westbrook here that's kind of floated to the top over 2 years. And then Guardian is from the Colorado or Plains Gold program. The one thing I want to say about Colorado stuff is watch for the winter hardiness, and there's typically not much disease resistant with that material. Langen kind of floated to the top in the 2-year average. That's another Colorado line, but it's not there for the 3 years, so I left that out of the green arrow designation, I guess you'd say here. And now let's sort by 1 year. You can see that the ones that performed the best over 3 years were still at the top, maybe not in the same order. And then we have a few more that did not float to the top in the 2-year or the 3-year. AP Clear was a new one we saw. Looks pretty promising. That is from the Syngenta program or AgriPro program, but it's marketed through Sioux Nation out of Fort Pierre. Another AgriPro variety, AP Bigfoot, Lima Grain, Coaxium, and then Whistler's another Colorado line. Looked pretty good in 2021, but we don't have multi-year data on any of those, so it's hard to know. I don't put a whole lot of stock in 1 year because I've seen varieties perform very well 1 year and then fall out of bed the next year. So the more years you can look at, the better. So to sum up, my recommended varieties for winter wheat, and these three seem to rise to the top, no matter if you're looking at 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years. Okay, very solid performers, all very similar in grain protein content. If you want to visit with me about any of these, feel free to give me a call, but I'm not going to go into too much depth on the characteristics of these today. Okay, so moving on, let's look at spring wheat and kind of the same drill here. We'll look at central South Dakota just to keep things simple. So over 3 years, anything in the blue shading is in the top third of the trial. And I guess I didn't boldface these for statistical significance, but LCS trigger is going to be at the top 90% of the time. That is a very good starch producer. It really throws on the bushels, but you want to watch for the protein content. So in 2021, everything had high protein, right? Because we were so dry and under stress. But overall, let's look at the 3-year average over here. A lot of these other high yielding varieties are averaging in the 16s or upper 15s, but Trigger was in the 14s, which is good enough, you know, if they're going to start docking at 14% protein. But some years Trigger, I've seen it down in the 12s. So it will really put on the bushels. I mean, look at this over 3 years, it's 6 bushels better than the next one. But if you're worried about grain protein content at some point, that's one concern that I have. Then we have Cyvalda 3530 from Cropland, Shelley 3915 from Cropland, and then Driver from SDSU. And then Torgie's looking kind of promising too now. So those would be the best ones over 3 years that I have seen. If we look at 2 years, we've got some new ones coming up. Buster, I would say, is just about a twin sister to Trigger, maybe slightly higher yield, and they say better protein, but we've seen it for 2 years now, and it's really, I think it's about exactly the same animal as Trigger. And then 3099A, which A is an onless from Cropland. Very similar ilk to these two, very high bushel producer, but you got to watch out for the protein. And then we have another one that kind of floated to the top from Westbred. This is a newer one, 9606. Okay, let's look at 1 year. And we had a few more that came to the top here. Look at the yields in 2021 compared to the 2 year, 3 year. We were in the 40s compared to, you know, the 2 year and 3 year are up in the upper 50s and 60s. So anyway, this new one from Cropland, remember in the last slide we had an onless. This one is very similar to this 3099 yield wise and protein content wise, maybe slightly better in protein. This is a new one from Peterson Farm Seed that we've seen for 1 year, and actually this one I thought looked fairly good in the trials. Pretty good yield level and pretty good protein content. You can see it's got very high protein for being toward the top in the yield this year. Gunsmoke is a Clearfield variety, a new one from AgriPro, and then another one from Cropland 3188 to kind of round out the new stuff that we saw this year. So anyway, the yield trials are printed as a PDF, but if any of you want these in Excel format so you can do your own sorting and cutting and pasting, whatever, let me know and I can always send these to you. I get that request a few times every year. So my recommended spring wheat varieties, and I did 5 of them here just because I would say that the top 3 are not quite as consistent in spring wheat as they are in the winter wheat. Trigger with the caveat to watch for low protein. Saivalda is a very good one, high yields, not as high as protein as some of the others, but often good enough, or I'd say it's going to be about a point better on average than Trigger for protein, and usually maybe 2 to 3 bushels behind. Shelly, good one from Minnesota, kind of, I would say not typical of the Minnesota program, as in this one is a little bit higher yielding and lower protein. And Driver from SDSU is just a good combination of yield and protein, in my opinion. I would call this an improved version of Prevail. So if you've grown Prevail in the past, this is a good one to try. And then CP 3530, I would consider this kind of to be coming off the bench. I could even say this one might be better than Driver in most years or some years. I'd say these two can interchange. This one had a bad year in 2021, but not saying it won't be back again next year. So anyway, those are my recommendations for spring wheat. If you want to talk about any of these in depth as well, please just give me a call or send me an email. Okay, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about nitrogen and protein in wheat. So wheat sometimes has the reputation of being a low input crop, and that is kind of the opposite of true. You guys that grow wheat know that wheat takes a lot of nitrogen if you're going to do it right. And wheat, along with corn, are considered both heavy feeders. So you only really get about 33% nitrogen use efficiency. In other words, how much dry matter do you get from a pound of nitrogen? So it wastes a lot of it. And in wheat, if you look at the second point here, it loses nearly 40% of applied N following flowering or anthesis. And it actually emits ammonium gas. And this has been proven in the literature. And it's kind of amazing to think that it just emits the nitrogen as a gas and instead of utilizing it, but that's just the way it is. It's been estimated that if this process did not occur, in theory, the protein of wheat could double. So we could see, proteins in the 30% if this phenomenon of losing ammonia gas following harvest didn't happen. But the nitrogen or the protein that ends up in the grain is actually mainly a result of translocation. So whatever is accumulated in the plant at the time of flowering or before the time of flowering, and the roots, leaves, and plant tissue, etc., is translocated into the grain. So some of the varieties vary in how much they suck up, how much nitrogen they suck up. That's a scientific term right there, suck up. But anyway, we'll look a little bit about at that coming up here. And just to segue into the next trial or the next slide here, The difference in varieties, and I say variety selection here, you can choose for varieties with higher protein content. And we saw that when I went through the spring wheat results specifically. But turtles, I would say, are ones that are varieties that don't yield quite as much, and then hares are varieties that yield very well and then can be lacking on the protein content. So that's one way to increase your grain protein content, variety selection. I would argue that that's probably the most important. The second one is just to follow the college recommendations. You know, put enough nitrogen out there, 2.5 times your yield goal, minus soil test nitrogen and legume credit. So I would say most of the guys that I know that are doing wheat well are putting 150 pounds of N on. And if you figure they have 50 pounds of N between the soil and the legume credit or the early credit, they have a 200 pounds N out there. And that's in theory enough to grow 80 bushel wheat at a good protein level. And then finally, this one's a little bit more iffy, a little more variable, but you can foliar feed with a sprayer, just regular nozzles, following flowering, anthesis, Feeks 10.8, with 30 pounds of UAN mixed 1-to-1 with water. And this can increase the protein, especially in a better year. I don't know that this is ever going to be economically feasible, especially not with the fertilizer prices we have today. And the protein curve that we have today is not feasible to do in anything. We don't need high protein wheat this year. That's the way the growing season worked out. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that in the slide coming up here too. So let's talk first about the turtles versus hares. Okay, I apologize here. I did not relabel the title. I used this slide last year with last year's data. I updated the data, but I forgot to change the title. But this actually should say 2019 to 2021. And this is just a plot of the grain protein content of the varieties in the trial versus the grain yield. And this is percentage of the mean. So over here on the right, you can see LCS trigger that I talked about earlier, some of the lowest protein content and some of the highest yields. So this is just typical of what you see in spring wheat. Usually the lower the protein content, the higher the yield and vice versa. Just a negative correlation here. I would say the best stuff to plant is going to kind of be in this range, in my opinion. If you just want bushels, here's what you go for, the furthest to the right. But if you want a good combination of yield and protein, try to be in here somewhere. Okay, let's look at this in a different way. Again, I don't have the correct years in the title. That should say 2019 to 2021, but here's grain protein yield in pounds per acre. So if we take the yield times the percentage of protein, how many pounds of protein is a specific variety producing per acre? We get a little bit of a different look here. I would say really anything in this upper quadrant here would be something to look at, but more specifically probably over here. Grain yield is a percentage of mean. So these are the high yielders. And the thing to note is the high yielders are often the high protein producers too. So as long as you can meet your minimum protein of 14%, which everything did in 2021, you could probably just go with some of these high bushel producers. But again, I feel like year in and year out, some of the best stuff to plant is going to be in this area. Remember I mentioned PFS buns, that new one. Very good combination, very high yields and very good protein content per acre. So anyway, I borrowed this data from Joachim Wiersma. He's the wheat guy at University of Minnesota. They did this study back in 2011 and 2013 where they looked at 3 different N rates on what I would call 4 varieties. So 2 of these would be considered hares or high yielders, and that would be Foliar or Samson. And then 2 of these you would call turtles, which are high protein, high quality varieties, and that would be Vantage or Glen. And you can look here at this table. We have the yield in bushels per acre and the N rate here at the bottom. So at about 60 pounds of N here, here's our yield levels. I guess the race horses or the hares, you'd want to say, we're at about 70. And at the high level of 200 pounds per acre N, we were at about 80. So we gained about 10 bushels there. You can see though, at a certain point here, it took a while for the protein or the yields to respond. While we have a linear trend, they did not respond that much from from 60 pounds to 140 pounds. Okay. And the high yielders were higher across the range of N, and the high protein contents were lower. So let's look at protein here. Okay, at protein, the turtles were higher across the board. One thing to note here is that you kind of maximize protein content out at the N rate of 130 for these high protein wheats, and then the protein actually might drop off slightly as we get super high rates of N. Whereas I would say, to stereotype the race horses or the hares of Foliar and Samson, the protein kind of continues to increase as you go, as the N rate goes up. And the reason for this is the hares continue to put on starch or continue to add starch. And so a lot of times, you know, and I forgot to include this slide, but the protein content will come up at the end as you increase N, especially on those. But if you don't have enough N, the hares will continue to produce starch, and it will delete the protein, and the grain protein of those will go down as N goes up. So I feel like I'm not concluding this like I wanted to here, but just something to note that I guess varieties can respond differently. I feel like the higher yielding varieties respond to N more than some of the lower ones. So if you're not interested in putting on a lot of fertilizer, it's better for you to pick kind of a high protein variety from the get-go. Okay, then the final thing we're going to look at here, grain protein content influenced by foliar N timing. And Anthony Bly and Howard Woodard did this study back in the late 90s. And what they did was they put 30 pounds of UAN on, mixed 1-to-1 with water. I talked about that at 2 different stages, boot and post-pollination. And this is the grain protein content. Here's the untreated check. All of these were fertilized for 50-pound wheat. And then so on the boot and the post-pollination dates, they got just a little bit extra N. So anyway, I'm running out of time here, so we're going to speed up. These 3 years were significant, and we saw a 0.8% increase in protein, 0.7 and a 0.9. And if you look at all 3 years together, we saw about a 0.5 point increase in grain protein content. We won't talk about the stats since we're running out of time here, but so it is possible to increase your grain protein content with a foliar feed of nitrogen at the end of the season. But is it going to be economically feasible? I don't think in too many instances is that going to be the case. So let's look at some other research just quickly here. Fungicide winter wheat at Brookings location, 7 ounces per Pizarro. We had about a little over a 2 bushel response to fungicide and hardwood winter wheat in 2021. If you just analyze it by fungicide versus no fungicide, however, if I analyze it as a split plot analysis, it didn't really work. So in other words, if I do the right statistics on this, even though there was a 2 bushel increase, there was only a 66% chance that fungicide was working in 2021. And that makes sense. I mean, it was dry. We didn't see much disease pressure. And there's about 80% chance that the varieties responded differently to fungicide. And sorry, I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go through this too much. Seeding rate statewide, we looked at ideal hard red winter wheat at 1.2 million seeds per acre and ideal at 1.5 million seeds per acre. And actually the lower seeding rate was better. However, statistically, they were no different. And with exception to that, okay, I forgot, location didn't seem to matter, only 16% chance. However, I excluded this location from the average because we saw, you know, about a 12 bushel response to seeding rate at wall, where the higher was better than the lower. I had one producer when I talked about this at Draper last year say he knows what happened. He said there was no tillering at that location. We had moisture late, and so he said every I guess main stem produced a head. So he thinks that's the case. I don't know if that's experimental error or what, but I just figured when every other location had really no difference between seeding rate, that was a kind of an anomaly, so I left it out of the analysis. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about is seed size. I hear from some of the company people that you need to be planting bigger seeds, more robust, healthier seeds, and a lot of old farmers think that way too. But in reality, the smaller seeds have just as good of genetics, the same genetics as the bigger ones. And you might be able to get even more of a bang for your buck if you're paying by the pound to get more seeds out there per acre. So seed size, this is in spring wheat. We did a sort here. We actually had a middle sort too, but I didn't include it because there was no difference. If you look at the stats here, there's a 90% chance that seed size matters in this case. However, the smaller seeds yielded more than the bigger seeds, which was just the opposite of what the hypothesis would be. So are there stressful situations in springtime where larger seeds might yield more, have a healthier, more vigorous plant? All the seed size research I've done in spring wheat and winter wheat over the past few years, I've never seen a difference. So I'm going to try it one more year this year, and if I don't see a difference, I guess I'm just going to put that to bed and say there's no difference. So anyway, I do not have a summary slide because we covered so much material today. I couldn't think of a good way to sum up. I guess if I had one word, it would be variety selection, variety selection, variety selection. So I feel that's one of the most important aspects of wheat production. And I'd like to say thanks to Wheat Commission for funding variety trials and some of these other projects that I'm a part of. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, and is there any questions?
All right, well, if there are no questions, just a reminder, I did post a link for the upcoming Agronomy Winter Roadshow events. The next one will be this Friday in Chamberlain from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the American, and we hope to see everyone there. If not, please join us tomorrow for our last day covering wheat. We'll be discussing wheat management and disease updates.
Thanks, Shelby.
Yep, thank you.